Hi, good evening, and welcome to tonight's town hall with your city council members. Tonight we have Ann Parks and Francis Benjamin in Ward 1 and Becky Dueben from Ward 2 due to some being out of town issues. So welcome all of them. As you can see, we have some really easy short ground rules, just common courtesy type items that we wanted to get up in front of you. But tonight's your night as the community to come up and speak to council. If you're ready, just come up to the microphone and address them. We're going to go until 7:30 or whenever we're done, whichever happens first. So it's all yours. Welcome and thank you for coming.
I feel like that's don't all rush up at once. I know some of your names.
It feels a long distance. I'll tell you.
I feel like we should be down there.
It's because it's being recorded is the reason why we're here as opposed to
Also
down
that.
there. So even though it'd be nice to be down with you.
I'll break the ice.
Hi.
So let's see, I'm supposed to state my name. My name is Rick Grunwald. And what else am I supposed to say? Name and address. Okay. 1715 Northwest Lamont Street. And want to thank you all for serving our city. I've started to come to city council meetings of late just to learn what goes on. And I think it's important for citizens to be involved. And I'd like to get your comments on what you'd like to see as far as citizens, residents of the city and involvement and the importance of being involved. And I know, Francis, you've done some research on civility, right, in government. And I'd like to get your ideas on that because I know that there are lots of polarized views and I can be on one of those poles. And so, you know, how can we as residents work together with you all to see the good of our city? I've been a resident since 1965, met my wife here, went to WSU, worked for WSU for 40 years and retired. And so I've been here a long time, but I haven't really been involved. So I'd like to get your thoughts on that before I launch into any particular topic.
Thanks, Rick. Actually, I love that question. It's a great question to kick off. There are so many ways to get involved. I think all of them are really important, but one of the things I've been passionate about this year has been involvement in boards and commissions. There are a number of vacancies currently available, and serving on those, there's a couple of things. One is it informs the city, of course, but also it gets citizens more involved and more knowledgeable about what's going on. And for me, it also helps kind of prepare people should they ever want to serve on city council or something else. I think that's really important. There are a number currently available. I'm looking at the list Francis just handed me. There's the DEIB, the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Commission that people can apply for. There's the Civil Service Commission, the Library Board, what am I missing? Salary Commission, I think I got, and Planning. And there's actually a city website where all of the commissions are described and an application is available as well. That for me is what I think would be the top one, because there are a lot of times our commissions and boards don't have enough volunteers, and I'm not sure why that is. But we definitely need the input of citizens. Thank you for starting off with that question.
Thank you again, Rick. And just to tack onto that, the thing that I would say is if you're trying to figure out where to start, where's your passion? You know, what interests you? Because the processes sometimes can bog down. Sometimes they take time to work through. And so you need something that you have a passion with, that you can stick with and work through to the end. Because sometimes the process is just because of what we need to do in order to make sure that it's an open process, it's a transparent process, everybody has their voice in it. It's not always a quick just we're done, but we need to make sure that everybody's involved and has their voice heard in it. So that's why I say make sure that that passion is something as you pick. But if you're thinking about our community, I know we're here, City Council, and Becky talked about what we have open from the city side, but there's also a number of great entities within our community that also are working to make our community better. And so that's where I first of all say is think about where your passion is and start there in order to work to make Pullman better. And as a town, we always have areas that we can improve upon. So don't feel that, oh, you'll just get poo-pooed. I mean, this is something where there's always opportunity for us to improve.
Thank you. Yes and yes, I agree with all of that, both of them. Sir, you asked about, how would we like citizens to get involved and what would that look like? And definitely boards and commissions are great, but also just interacting with the city council, whether it's email, leaving us phone messages. We get a lot of feedback about what's not right and what's going wrong, but also we do get people suggesting ideas, and that helps us, and we bring that into discussions when we're setting goals, when we are talking to staff about trying to find solutions. So just interacting with us is really valuable too, and we all really enjoy that. That's part of the reason we're here. By getting involved as well in the volunteer capacity, the neat thing is you get to know city staff. If you're on the planning commission, you get to know the community development director. Awesome. But you get to know these people whose names you might see in a newspaper article, and you have, when you come into City Hall, Mike Urban might say, hey, good to see you, what can I help you with, or if they pass you. So there's a lot of value in that, because by doing that, you're going to learn some of the, not necessarily behind the scenes, but you're going to learn why things happen the way they happen, a little bit more how we are constricted in what we do, and how we would love to do certain things, but we're just not able to. So you kind of get that behind the scenes look, which is really valuable. As far as civility, somebody said this, it wasn't me, but there's no political way to pick up your garbage or snowplow the streets. So when we're here, we all leave our whatever's at the door, our affiliations, our beliefs, because we want to do what's best for our city. And so we're all here because we care about our city, about our streets, about our neighbors. And so I think that just keeping that sort of top of mind when we're interacting with each other, really anywhere, but we all want the same things. We want our families to be safe. We want to have shelter and help others and things like that. So that would be my biggest thing about civility, is just focus on the goals that we all want.
Thank you for covering that.
Hi there. I started a line, and I have a prepared statement, I guess, because even though I live sort of a public life, I get nervous speaking. So I don't have a question. So hi there. My name is Allison Montrotolo. I live at 635 Northeast Illinois. I want to thank you for your service to the Pullman community, and specifically for hosting these events that create opportunities to hear from your constituents. One of my favorite things about Pullman is the trail system. Years ago, our family seriously considered moving to a different college town, and what ended up being the deciding factor for us was actually the trails. They are easy access to recreation and transportation. They're so convenient and a distinctive part of Pullman. I'm also a huge, huge fan of Neal Public Library and the access that it provides to information and entertainment through its excellent collection of materials and thoughtful programming. I think I just messed up your thing. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
You have power.
I am here tonight because I volunteer my time and financial resources to several nonprofit organizations that are dedicated to making Pullman a better, more thriving place. And I jumped in line because it seemed apropos of what we were talking about. I know you yourselves support and contribute to organizations like these, and you understand that partnerships between local government and nonprofit groups are one of the most effective strategies that we can utilize for community engagement and improvement. I am so sorry. The trails that I and many others love would not exist without the city's partnership with Pullman Civic Trust, and our thriving library would be less thriving without its affiliated Friends group. I am proud to be a member and supporter of these nonprofit groups and many others. And one organization that is especially dear to my heart is the College Hill Association, which is a grassroots nonprofit dedicated to improving, preserving, and celebrating public life in Pullman's northeast quadrant. The CHA Board of Directors is comprised of a diverse group of individuals with a range of experiences in Pullman's most transient neighborhood. Over the years, the CHA has led the way in several community improvement initiatives. And as co-chair of the association's board of directors, I feel I can rightfully say that our board is very eager to work with you and others to create a better College Hill and a better Pullman. Some of the ways that CHA makes a difference in our community include, but are not limited to, hosting neighborhood events to foster a sense of community among residents, sending out monthly communications to keep residents informed, organizing cleanup events, planting trees, writing letters of support for grants, and advocating for long-term improvement of the neighborhood's built environment. In doing the work that we do, we have forged several constructive partnerships with city staff. I personally have a positive experience with city staff, or else I am told of one, on a weekly or sometimes even daily basis. I want to mention specifically the College Hill Matters subcommittee of the Town Gown Collaborative. It has been especially successful in improving conditions for walking in the College Hill neighborhood, and that involves several city departments, and it's just making a real difference. In the past few years, I've seen the city become more data-driven in the way it makes decisions. And more recently, I've noticed significant improvements in communications, which makes government more inclusive and transparent. The shift from a board of adjustment to a hearing examiner has given me increased confidence in our land use decisions. And I'm very appreciative of the council's effort to improve our downtown, not only because improving downtown is important, but also because it gives me hope that even in these polarizing times, people can come together and make good things happen. And so now I'm coming to my point finally. I want you to know that College Hill residents are underserved in access to public green and open space. If I'm reading the ward map correctly, residents of Ward 2 have just two facilities, McGee Park and Petrie Natural Area. Through an MOU with Washington State University, ASWSU also maintains, at least for now, a small park, Ruby Street Park, that is for the use and enjoyment of WSU students, though ownership of that park could be subject to change at any time. And it would make sense to me to proactively communicate with WSU to secure that land for the future use and enjoyment of neighborhood residents. I also want you to know that we've provided input to both the Community Development and Parks Department that we would love to see a path around the city's, there currently is a path around water tank number 8, but for future water tank number 12, a path around both of them, maintained and improved and kept as an accessible natural area with a panoramic view. This is located on the highest elevation within the current city limits of Pullman. There are currently no city parks in the area commonly known as apartment land, where residents live in high-density apartment complexes. In the current Parks, Facilities, and Recreation Comprehensive Plan, natural areas received the highest score in the needs survey. Finally, another issue we would appreciate your leadership on is urban forestry. The new comprehensive plan contains lots of goal language around protecting and improving our urban forest and tree canopy. In 2022, the Washington State Department of Natural Resources awarded a record amount of urban and community forestry grant funding. The Spokanopy program receives regular funding toward its goal of having every neighborhood in Spokane have at least a 40% tree canopy by 2030. Primary funding for Spokane's urban forestry program comes through its stormwater funds, since street trees do an excellent job of mitigating stormwater as well as providing a host of other community benefits. Working to improve our urban forest and tree canopy is one of the College Hill Association's top strategic plan goals. In closing, I'll thank you again for hosting these town halls and invite you to contact me or any other CHA board members if you have questions about how we can work better together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Allison.
I didn't know if you wanted to comment on that to say good idea or those are good comments. My name is Curtis Troll. I live at 700 Southwest Fountain. I've lived in Pullman since 1979. Didn't think I was going to be here for very long when I came over to school, but I fell in love with the town and never left. In tonight's paper, it said the engineers were beginning surveying the downtown area Monday as a part of preliminary work for Project Downtown Pullman. I know we've had several attempts of designing some new things for downtown, and maybe I've just been negligent, but I don't really have a good picture of the Project Downtown Pullman. Has this stuff been decided upon? I mean, we're not going to go do the backwards parking anymore. I don't think anybody here was in favor of that. But can you describe a little bit about what we're going to be expecting, and if there's been some decisions really made, and is this real work going to start in now and make some changes?
I
can start.
I can start with it. Curtis, thank you for your question. As it relates to the downtown project, there is a website and I know it's with the downtown project, and it's linked from the city that references all the different maps that we've been working on and that have come before the council, a number of different iterations of what it would look like. And there's been a downtown steering committee that has actually done even deeper dive looking at it and working with the design. And I appreciate everybody that's been involved in this process. What as a council we've done is we have approved the first top items within the list that was proposed. There was a lot of items proposed, but funding-wise, we had to stop at a certain point. And the funds that we're looking at right now, and staff can tell me yes or no if I'm accurate on this, is something that we actually need to by 2024. Is that correct? Actually have spent and expensed. So it's something that this is a project that is going to happen rather quickly in the public's eyes once we start. And next summer is going to be the big start on it. It covers a significant part of Main Street, Bishop Boulevard. There is a potential for Olson and Pine Street Plaza, and I'm missing one.
Project.
And I'll look to staff to.
Or Holly, yeah. Grand.
So I said a Grand, Main Street, Pine Street, and then
High Street Plaza.
High Street, and then if we're able to fund it, then Olson.
Right.
And there is within it, we wanted to get to two-way traffic. We're not able to get to two-way traffic as long as it is a state highway. So it'll still remain traffic the same direction, but we're actually looking at reducing some of the lanes in order to widen the sidewalks, in order to create more space for people, to make it more pedestrian friendly. We're looking at traffic calming measures in order to slow vehicles down on that, in order to quiet down the noise, so that you can sit outside at one of our restaurants and actually have a conversation as the vehicles are going by, things like that. It'll involve changes of our tree landscape. Some trees need to be moved because of where they're located, but there's more that are being put in place of those.
Yeah, that's all, that's pretty much sums it up. Also, we're looking at, Francis said putting in, making it more pedestrian friendly, but we're also going to put in a bike lane downtown, a designated bicycle lane. We're going to add planters as buffers between the road and the sidewalk. So, and bring those sidewalks out, they'll be new and they'll be wider. And so there'll be more room for, if restaurants want to have tables out there, or if there are benches, there'll be plenty of room for people to walk around them. Other things that may or may not be addressed right now, but are things like bringing a play structure into one of the malls downtown, one of the plazas, either Pine Street or High Street for children, to bring families down as well. And then there are some things in the future, and this all started with BDS is the name of the consulting company who helped us devise this plan, and they started with some town halls and some meetings to get public input, gosh, probably 3 years ago now, I think, or 4. It actually was pre-COVID. That's kind of our marker now, isn't it?
It is.
The before or after the pandemic. So it's been a process where they got community input. We've been getting community input. It comes before us, and we have more discussion about these things. And so, as Councilmember Benjamin said, we slowly are chipping off and making decisions so that we can get projects going, and people will see things happening next summer. They will see results of everything we've been talking about and all of the funding that our staff have been able to acquire for this.
And I would just add to that, Curtis, 2 things. One is, this has been, as Allison said, data-driven. Like, it's been very smart, very systematic approach. I've been very, very impressed. And the second thing is, as eloquently as my fellow council members have described that, some of the pictures and images that are online are fantastic. I know any one of us would love to meet with you and help you get an idea of what that would look like.
Hi, my name's Carl Bemke. I live at 1735 Northwest Lamont Street, Ward 1. And I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to come and address you. I want to talk about trails, following up with what Allison said. Trails are important to Pullman, and right now we have an unprecedented opportunity to expand trails in Pullman because of 3 different things. One is the possibility of rail banking, rails that are currently unused and unsightly. We have the opportunity for the state to turn over the North Bypass to the city and provide, the North Bypass is for transportation, trails are transportation, have an opportunity to have trails through, for a long distance through the northern part of town. And the third is water towers. That wasn't on my list, but I heard Allison talk about it, and I thought, oh yeah. She knows the numbers of the water towers. I don't, but there are several new ones and opportunities for trails there. Why are trails important to Pullman? A number of reasons. One is it improves the quality of life. Even for people who are not active trail users, they like seeing trails. I've had numerous people tell me that they've never really walked the Chipman Trail, but that they sure enjoy driving by and seeing other people do it. Trails automatically become parks. They automatically become places where people gather and where they're healthy. It encourages interaction among people. If you walk a trail and you pass somebody that you kind of know, you undoubtedly say hi. If you pass them in the car, you don't. It's just a way of increasing interactions. They're also important for fighting climate change. They provide an opportunity to walk or to bike instead of using their car. They also provide an opportunity to do your recreation locally. rather than getting in the car and using carbon to drive somewhere else for your recreation. And they encourage economic development. Allison mentioned that trails are one of the reasons that she and her family are still here in Pullman. Any of you that have recruited students or employees know that when people come and look at communities, one of the things they look at is whether or not it's a pleasant place to walk around, and trails make it a pleasant place. It also encourages retirees to stay in Pullman. I walk the trails a lot, and especially during the day when younger people are either working or in school, I see lots of other retirees. Retirees have pensions and 401ks that they can take anywhere. They can be spending their money on food and restaurants and entertainment in Pullman or anywhere else in the world. Making the place attractive for retirees to stay in Pullman is good for the economy. So what are these opportunities we've got? Well, one is these water towers. The new water tower that is on Hills on Grand has already become a destination for walkers. I don't know if it was planned that way, but there has to be a service road for any water tower. The service road that goes to that tower is paved. It's blocked off for traffic, for car traffic, but walkers have made a little mud trail around the barricade and up to the top. It would be really nice to extend that beyond going to the north so that you could get over to the Albion Drive where the city has a trail up to the new Alpine community that's just now opening. The trail that is up above SEL is close to apartment land that Allison mentioned, needs more places to go. That whole area could be connected by the right-of-way that goes right past the Magpie Forest that is owned by Washington State University and that is has a number of informal trails. That provides an opportunity for a trail to connect all the way from the new elementary school, past the new housing developments across Grand Avenue, through a nice wetland, past SEL, the biggest private employer in town, past Magpie Forest, and through apartment land. And then finally, rail banking. Rail banking, unused rails that are currently unsightly and in some places unsafe could become real assets to the community. It would improve the roadways that currently have tracks that drivers don't like, and it would protect the trails for future rail use if that should be needed. I'd be interested in any of your comments about trails, and I thank you for your support. Oh, one other thing is, I looked at Forbes today. Forbes has, every year they have the best places to retire. And so I looked online at what criteria they use. One of the things they use is assess the walkability, that is the ability to stroll easily to basic retail businesses and mass transit for everyday needs, and bikeability, same idea using pedaling. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. I agree that trails are really important to our community, and as we grow and grow outward, I love what you just said about developing the trail from Kamiak Elementary pretty much all the way through to where the apartments are. I do agree that we need some green space out there somehow too around the apartments, or some recreating space for them. And I just, the rail banking too, Bobby made a really good presentation for us a few weeks ago, Bobby Ryder, and it was very, very interesting, and especially around, down by the playfields. That would be really nice to be able to redesign that space so it's safer for children and parents and anybody using it. But I had a son who played baseball, and so, you know, you get out, you have to park, and then you've got to get them all across the street over to the fields, and so, I mean, it would just be nice. And I know that staff is talking to WSDOT about that, or, well, WSDOT, but also the railroad company. Staff is working on it. It's a slow process, but they are having conversations about rail banking and have plans on how to see if we can get their assistance in making that happen.
I would just say that, yes, as both you and Allison have mentioned, the Pullman Civic Trust has done an amazing job with the trails, and they do make downtown Pullman and all over where they are so much more livable. I think we're all pulling in the same direction. I mean, hear, hear.
So, thank you, Carl, for your advocacy for trails. I knew what your topic was going to be when you came up, because it's your passion, and that's, I talked about earlier, find that passion and invest in it. And I appreciate that, because I know if I have a trail question, I can go to you and you have the answer. So I appreciate that, and I'm glad to be able to support you as we work to build more trails and as we work on this rail banking piece. Thank you.
And I would just add too, that parks are really important to the council. We talk about it every time we have goal-setting sessions, and we just completed Mary's Park, which is a 100% accessible park for people with all abilities. And so that's, now we can look to other areas and other projects, and so trails would certainly fit right into that.
Hi, my name is Nancy Grunwald. I'm at 1715 Northwest Lamont Street. I'm just one comment about trails that I would love before we even start on more trails is to maintain the ones we have better. There are, you know, I love to bike on our trails, and you go boom, boom, boom. They're not keeping up those big divots or those big, whatever you call them. And so that is just one concern I have, and I remember calling the city a year ago, and I've seen really no improvement since then, and I know probably finances are tight, and so, but that is something I would sure love to see, that our current trails are maintained a little bit nicer for biking or skateboarding or whatever people have on wheels. You can step over those pretty easily, but anything on wheels is gonna, it's pretty uncomfortable sometimes. So just a comment.
So Nancy, just a follow-up comment for you, because I know I've seen you riding around town. Is it a particular area of town that there's a problem,
Well, North
or is it
Grand,
just in general?
North Grand on the west side is pretty bad. And then there are the trails down by the city playfields, past the city playfields, toward Bishop Boulevard. Those are kind of rough as well. So those are the places that, and sometimes they don't, I mean, eventually they usually tame the brush by the sides of the roads, but this summer it really is encroaching because of our weather. So just a note, if we can see those trails maintained a little better, that would be great. But I'd love to see more trails, of course. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy.
Hello. Before I get started, we have a number of people that joined us. So just so you all know, you guys could come up here, get in line or whatever. You have questions or comments, they're here to hear them. So just wanted to put that in there because some of you guys came in afterwards.
Thanks, Holly.
Yeah, no problem. Many of you already know me. My name is Holly Greystone. My address is 400 Southeast Crestview. And I just wanted to come up here and share a few thoughts with you. I have the privilege of meeting many of you on a regular basis, including a number of the staff members here. And I am absolutely grateful for the efforts that you're putting into our community and pulling us forward from improving our sidewalks, improving our walkability. I love the day I'm going to be able to push my sister down the sidewalk in her wheelchair in downtown Pullman, which I currently can't do, but I look forward to the day of being able to push her down those roads and take her into those businesses. So I'm grateful for the efforts that you guys are putting in for the project to improve our infrastructure, to improve our walkability. The trails, as mentioned by Curtis and Allison, a number of individuals, are one of the number one reasons why my wife and I ended up staying in Pullman. In fact, we've pulled all of our resources into Pullman because we truly believe in the mission of Pullman as a community and as a place we want to grow old together. I know that sounds super cheesy, but it's true. But to have that ability to take our dogs or members of our family who are wheelchair, they're not in wheelbarrows, I promise, wheelchair bound, and being able to push them down those trails and those pathways. And as Nancy mentioned, there are a few of those areas. I call them snakes in the trail. You kind of hit them as a bump. And those, if you have an injury that does disrupt, then it's hard on the body. But I also know that you guys are working on a number of projects. You guys are working on a few sidewalk projects. I believe, Sean, you have a few of those you got going on, just one or two? Yeah? He's got one or two projects he's managing. I do appreciate that. Appreciate all the efforts that you guys are doing. And communicating with our community is huge. We heard that mentioned earlier today. That has been a tremendous change in our leadership as a city to its citizens, and I am grateful that I have an opportunity to help facilitate that as the executive director of the Downtown Pullman Association. So thank you guys very much.
Thank you,
Thanks, Holly.
I'd just like to say, it's been mentioned a few times about our improved communication, and that was actually a city council goal to create a position of a communication director. And Matthew Young has filled that position, and he's doing just wonderfully with it. And we're hearing the results too. And we see and hear the things as well. But to know that you all are aware of it and what we're putting out is really, really good to know.
I'm sure there's more.
Hi, my name is Jane Stavish, and I live in a rental on Wadley Drive. I've only lived in Pullman for 2 months. I've lived recently in Oak Harbor, Washington, Hillsboro, Oregon. I spent 25 years in Olympia, Washington, prior to that. So for the last 5 years, I've sort of traveled up and down the west side, and I showed up tonight to see the differences I might see between the west side of the states and the east side of the states. And I know on the west side, their struggles are homelessness, drug use, crime, not enough police, long, 2-hour 911 phone call waits. And so before I buy a property in Pullman, I'm looking around saying, well, what will this town be like in 5 years? Will it be like what I left? Oak Harbor, Washington was pretty good. Multnomah County, Oregon, not so good at all. And I'm looking for signs that this wonderful small town will not follow that trajectory. So I'm hoping that I hear something from the 3 city council members that are here tonight, what they realize maybe went wrong on the west side of the Cascades, and what they might do differently here to prevent the homelessness, the drug use, the crime rates, no police force. It's a mess. So here I am, and I'm hoping you can answer some questions.
Thank you for coming this way. The first thing I'd say is there's 3 of us council members, but there's 7 total. Any of us would love to talk your ear off about just how great Pullman is. You ask a number of different questions. If we look at our police force, we're actually at full police force. We don't have any empty spots within our police force, at least as of a month ago, and I don't know of any changes. So I hope in one way that speaks to you. And our police is very much focused on a community policing policy as opposed to an enforcement policy. So in other words, they're in relationships and community relationships, and they're out trying to identify, they're listening, and really all of our staff are, and I'm using police as an example right now, but if I was to look at Public Works, if I was to look at any of our others, they're watching what's going on outside, and as a council, we ask them, what do you anticipate that is coming this way that we need to work on now ahead of time, as opposed to reacting once there's a problem in place. And so we're trying to move in that direction as much as possible. Now, we'll probably hear some comments, throughout the evening where people say you're missing it here and you're missing it there. I mean, I'm sure I know there's areas where we can always get better. But as it relates to our schools are considered very top line when we're looking at schools and the awards that they've won. When we look at our hospital, we have an incredible medical system, and a lot of people they look at what's the medical, what's the education piece, and safety. We receive a number of awards as it relates to the safety level of our community compared to other communities in that way. And I'll let others tout.
Yeah, I really appreciate the question, Jane. Everything Francis said, and I would also say that we have some of the best city employees. I mean, I kind of don't know how we got this lucky. Whatever we did, I want us to keep on doing it because they are so smart, so dedicated, so data-driven, and I think they're willing to tell the hard truths. And it's made Pullman a much better place. Beyond that, we have so many organizations that are pulling together in the same direction. I mean, I feel like just the number of people who've shown up tonight speaks to the commitment of everyone to make Pullman a livable place. There's, in 5 years, what's going to happen? I love that question because it's one of the things that inspires me and makes me want to serve on council, is, first of all, as has already been stated, a brand new downtown, hopefully expanded trails and more green spaces, and then the continued. I don't know if you've had a chance yet to, for example, to go to the public library and see what's available there. But even, if you just consider the library alone, what we've been able to create, and of course, when I say we, I mean they, right? That's been the public library staff. It's been really fantastic. All of this, and we're infused by these students every year who bring so much youth and vitality. And I know people laugh when I say this, but one of the things I love about Pullman is the closer it gets to the holidays, the quieter it gets. It's just the truth. If you're looking for a place to spend the holidays where it's absolutely quiet, I one time ran down the center of Main Street on Christmas Day, just so quiet. And still all of that vitality. Now we have city employees in place who are dedicated, focused, as I said, smart. We've got all of these organizations working together. I wouldn't be anywhere else. So, very excited.
Thank you. And I agree 100% about the staff and city employees. And it's important to note that most of them do live in the city of Pullman or very nearby. I know for a fact that a few employees in the audience, one of the things that did draw them here was our trail system, was our outdoor recreation opportunities. And so going back to what has already been said, also I did want to mention being in a college town does have a university town. I mean, we're like a rural farming community with a Pac-12 university right in the middle of it. So that's a really interesting dynamic, and it brings diversity for sure, lots of education. I mean, Mr. Bemke was looking up things that's a scholarly thing. Like, I'm going to look up the retirement, and I'm going to, and we're surrounded by just wonderful people who share that information. Our library is a standalone library. It is part of our city. It is not part of the Whitman County library system, which is also a wonderful system. But we have grown this library. The staff. And really, I mean, we just had a change in directors, and our existing director now was the adult services librarian before he got this job. And one of the interesting things he said to us in an interview was, he said, people ask me all the time, why do we not have more foreign language print material? And he said, because we do not have one dominant foreign language in our city. He said, if we did, I'd probably say it's Chinese. But he said, I don't have enough to get every language in there, or even the most dominant ones. So that tells you a little bit about how our community is and how it's just such a wonderful partnership between the city and WSU. Our police forces partner wonderfully. Our fire, the city fire department services all of campus as well. So it's really, they do a lot of work up there. They do fire inspections for all the Greek houses and off-campus housing, group housing, things like that. Jane, as far as crime, we don't have the sort of crime that where you came from, but we have things like vehicle prowls, thefts from local stores. We can, I don't know, we have maybe a murder a decade or something. I mean, it's a whole different thing. It's more about personal safety. Well, obviously, we do have domestic violence and things like that, and we have a wonderful agency in town, Alternatives to Violence, that helps survivors through that. So even there's just such a network of help that with law enforcement really does get people the help they need. I think that's it. No, we didn't address homelessness. We do have a bit of a homelessness problem, and it's for most citizens, it's pretty invisible. It takes the form a lot of times of people couch surfing, right? So they're just going around. But we do have dwellers who outside, and our Parks Department and our Public Works and our law enforcement do try to help them get to safe places. But that is one goal that the council has, and if you come tomorrow night, Nathan Weller will speak to this a lot, is trying to provide some sort of shelter for people who need it, especially in extreme conditions. We have opened temporary warming and cooling shelters in cold and hot weather. And we did have a temporary shelter for several months a few winters ago was it here?
It was here,
Yeah.
before this was here.
Before, yes, when this was still a church. So that is an issue. It isn't as visible as it is in the towns that you mentioned, but it is something, and it's something that we are aware of as a council, and we do discuss it. We bring it up a lot.
Excuse me, Rick Grunwald, 1715 Northwest Lamont. And now I'll bring up a hot button issue, and that's climate change. I was at the council meeting on last Tuesday, and appreciated the work of the climate change lobby of Palouse. Anyway, a lot of data and research done on that. The thing I was wondering, though, is there were 415 respondents. There was only maybe 75% possible Pullman residents in that. So with 1% of the population responding, is that what you would go forward with? If I don't necessarily agree with I'm concerned about the environment and everything. We need to be good stewards. I'm not sure about the climate change part and trying to get rid of all the gasoline engines and stuff like that. So is there, as we go forward as a community, will there be what's the opportunity for more input? Or do you just take what the lobby has presented and go with that? Or, I guess, what are the plans of the council moving forward with that very important issue?
Okay, I'll go. Thanks, Rick. Yeah. So first of all, thank you for taking a little harder look at that data. I'm with you. Every time someone does a survey or something, I try to take a look to see who responded and who didn't, whose voices we're hearing and who we're not. One of the things that the CCL, I think, presented was, is that it was representative of the Pullman area, which assuaged me a bit, but that still doesn't tell me exactly who got to speak. Even so, as I sat and listened to the presentation, I was really taken with a couple things. First of all, in terms of climate change as a city, there are distinct steps we can take to make sure our community is healthy as possible, and the city has done an amazing job so far. You'll see the electric buses going around. You probably heard the presentation on the aquifer. Like, those are like real hardcore things that we can manage, we can actually do something about. So from my perspective, I'll just say this, is that I all the time have coffee with constituents or tea and sit down. I'm always open to that feedback, regardless of the time or if there's a survey or not. That I think I can speak for the council in general. We're very happy to meet with constituents. That said, from my perspective, what the CCL brought forward is, as I said, a lot of what they suggested is kind of already in the works, and I think we're open to whatever makes Pullman a healthier place. So yes to more voices, and
Yeah.
we're already engaged.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask Mike Urban, because you just said this to me, and I cannot remember the name of it. Are we not, can you come and speak to that, please, just for a moment? This is our city administrator, Mike Urban, and I believe that we are working on standing up a commission to focus on this. But I can't remember the name.
Sure, we're actually there. Much like the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Committee, Council has tasked us with creating a Climate and Sustainability Committee, and at the next meeting on October 18th, the group that put together the mission, vision, and a few goals is ready to present an ordinance for council to adopt. Boy, if I get this wrong, I apologize, but I believe their recommendation is the Environmental Resilience Commission to be a kind of a focal point for bringing these things forward to council for more advice on top of the items that we're already doing, for lack of a better term, loosely as a organization.
Thank you. Thanks for clarifying that, because that just flew by me today when you said that, but I did remember it. And I think one of our really stellar examples of our wanting to help with carbon emissions on all of that is our transit fleet. And our transit director, Wayne Thompson, works very hard to acquire funding, and he is really good at rotating out buses. So I think we only have 2 fully diesel buses left in the fleet. They're designing buses now. He's had to kind of work through this over the years, but there are buses now who are hybrid or electric that can get up our hills and that can run longer than a couple of routes through campus. And so that would be one example. But across all of our departments, there's a lot of sustainability and awareness that's starting to happen, but this new committee will definitely help us get the feedback that we're looking for to make more informed decisions.
You know, as we're looking at this context of sustainability, it's something that we need to continue to focus on, whether we're looking at our aquifer and issues around water. Related to your data question, I kind of look at it similar to, we had one person propose earlier this year for a particular business on site, and they provide us some data as it related to traffic data. And there were questions about the traffic data, and it was something where, no, the city wouldn't accept that data. If we're going to move forward, we're going to look at making sure we have all the accurate data. Now, I'm not referencing it to the current data you talked about. But one of the things that as a city, we're working very hard to be data-driven and consider the data as we move forward. And so that's a piece and a subset of the data, but we're going to want to, anything we move forward on, get as much input as possible from our community in the process. The other piece I'd say is, if we only had 1% of our community participate, then we need to work on how do we get more people to participate. And in some ways, the fact that you're in the room, and those of you that are in the room, that's telling you that you do want to participate, you want to be engaged in this, and I would encourage you, anytime there is a survey out there, whether it's around trails or around bikes or whether it's around climate, participate in it. Don't just say, oh no, I'm not going to, because we really need to have a good cross-section of our entire community participating in these in order for us as council members to make wise, informed decisions. If we ask for data and we get, this percent of community that participates in, and nobody else participates, then we're going to have to take it as, well, they don't care, and these are the ones that care about it. But we really need to hear from our whole community, and so I appreciate you bringing this up as someone that is not quite sure on all the data, but it's something, what it speaks to us is we need to make sure that we continue to work to get all of our community engaged in these processes.
And then I would just jump in, if I may, one more and say, Rick, you started off by asking how to serve. And Francis said, find your passion. If this is your passion, there's a commission coming up. I'll just say that. I'd love to have a cup of coffee with you and talk further. Joe.
Hi, my name is Joe Astorino. I'm at 310 Northwest Joe Street, believe it or not.
Lucky you.
And I just wanted to thank you for your commitment and service. I know it's a lot and can take a toll on people, so I just really appreciate spending time on this topic. So I just wanted to raise awareness and see your opinions on an issue related to diversity, and specifically that of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender community of Pullman. And so as a member of that community, we've felt very welcomed here, but we've noticed that some of the more systemic things that can be done as a city are not continuous. And so a good example would be in the midst of the pandemic in 2020, the month of June was, someone was able to manage at the city level to rise the pride flag. And we just really appreciated things like that, but we noticed in 2022 and 2021, there was no celebration of any kind. And then similarly in Moscow, I don't believe it's at the city level, but I know there's broad support for welcoming and affirming stickers on certain businesses that will go through a process of training their staff and understanding some things they can do to make sure community members feel welcome. And I just want to hear from each of you, what are some ideas you might have? Would the city consider having a Pullman Pride celebration in 2023 in the month of June? Things like that. Is there support for that, or what can we look forward to?
I can jump in and start, and I'll start with the legal piece, and then I'll start with the other piece. The reason why the flag wasn't raised is there was actually a decision that came out, interpretation by municipal MSRC, where basically what they indicated is if you raise a flag of one organization, then you have to raise the flag of any organization that comes to you that wants a flag raised. And so
Explain MSR.
So
What that is. Municipal Research.
Municipal Research Council.
It's kind of an advising group for us.
So related to the flag one, that's the piece that triggered, and I apologize if that wasn't communicated back. I related to that, but that's one thing, because we had other individuals saying, well, I want this flag raised, and I want this flag, and it suddenly it got beyond the scope of how do you choose winners and losers, and there was a lawsuit that was the potential that was happening related to it. Now, as it relates to Pullman being welcoming, we very much want Pullman to be welcoming. I actually chair the welcoming committee as a part of the Pullman 2040 task force, in which we're working to identify what are ways in which we make Pullman welcoming for everyone within the community, and have been working to identify specific groups, cultures, and then looking at how do we how do we help make Pullman one where people feel welcome, that they don't feel that they're marginalized, that they're hidden, but we care for everybody for who they are. I mean, everybody, we should recognize the dignity of each individual person and recognize them with the dignity they have and the value that each person has, regardless of if they belong to a certain group or something. That shouldn't, a group connection, and that's not the right term for it, but shouldn't be what makes that determination in that way. But I would welcome if you'd like to, be a part with ideas that you have. I mean, we're trying to look at what are events, what are things we can do in order for help people get to know our community and get to know the members of the community as individuals, as opposed to a specific label related to them.
Thank you. The first thing that I'm excited about is that we are going to have a diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging committee, and they will be, I think, key in helping us navigate some of these things. And I think that I love the idea of having a Pride celebration in 2023 sometime in June. We don't really have much happening in June. Most of our students have left, but they're still we're all here. Most of the people in the community are here. It's one of the nicest weather months, typically. Well, okay, this year is cold and rainy, but usually. So I love that idea, and I think that the DEIB committee could be the place where we could really work with them and get advisement from them and give them input as well to do that. I do think that it's important to recognize the LGBTQ community and celebrate with them, for sure.
And I would say, Joe, that I think what you're experiencing is a general goodwill to be inclusive as possible without a lot of planning around that. So as Ann said, the DEIB Commission will advise in that. I think Pride would be great. I don't know why Moscow has to have all the thunder. And was it in September this year, Pride in Moscow? It was in August. That's right. The month is June, but because there's so few people in town, they celebrate in August. I think in previous years they've celebrated in October, something like that. So we could even get creative, like on the month with that. But I do think the city will benefit from that commission and having steady feedback. I belong in my another life. On campus, I belong to the President's Commission on Gender Identity, Expression, and Sexual Orientation. And one of the things as that commission we've been able to do is advise the president, who WSU has goodwill, wants to celebrate these things, but may not be totally informed. And so I'm hoping that the DEIB commission serves that same role that GSO does.
Thank you. And I would like to just finally add that one of the persons primarily responsible for getting the Pride flag flown at City Hall was former council member Dan Records. So he was very instrumental in that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Hi, my name is Stephen Johnson. I'm on Northwest Clifford, 905. I have a long list, but I'll just have a couple things to comment on in particular. One is water conservation. I know that PBAC and the cities are all working on this issue, and they just came out with, I think, moving forward on one of the scenarios. One of my questions is the city seriously considering any regulatory action to actually take more drastic steps to reduce water use? You look at what's happening in the Southwest and especially the Colorado River system. I think it's very telling for the arid West, and I don't know if the actions that are being taken are really serious enough to deal with this issue. I mean, I still walk around neighborhoods this time of year and people are straight up watering in the evening. I mean, the grass isn't evapotranspirating that quick. I mean, and there's one thing to say for education and incentivizing, and don't get me wrong, I work professionally for the Department of Agriculture, writing contracts to incentivize conservation, but sometimes you need the stick. So I'd be curious, especially we keep pushing development in the city, but there's no measures to say that no new development doesn't have a green lawn, or, we try to work on xeriscaping. So that'd be my first question, is the city considering regulatory actions for water conservation? The second would be concerning updating or upkeep on city parks, particularly play equipment. I have a 4-year-old daughter. A lot of the equipment is kind of old and unacceptable. I mean, there's times when you go to parks and it's just got flagging around it because it's fallen apart, but it's still there. I mean, I buy Harrison Tot Lot. The thing's pretty old school, which is not to say that old play equipment is necessarily bad, but just like, I mean, some paint jobs and stuff even would be nice. So having a comment on city plans for updating the play equipment would be nice.
Well, thank you, Stephen. As far as the water conservation, we did just have a conversation about that at council, and I think as a council, we really do want to see some regulatory items, just lost the word, regulations put in place to really stem, as you're talking about water usage in the summer, specifically for landscaping. And I really liked your idea too about, not having as much green lawn in new developments. I know several years ago, I don't know if we still do it, but the city had an incentivization where if you took out so many square feet, at least a minimum number of square footage of lawn and replaced it with xeriscaping, you could get a rebate from the city. Still doing it, just like our toilet, our low flow toilet program as well. So, but I agree with you. It makes me crazy when you go past a commercial building at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on July 15th, and their sprinklers are just going, or they're going in the rain. That's neat too. It's like, and I know they're on timers, but, So I believe that it is a goal of the council, and I'm not sure, I know we've talked about it. I don't think anything's actually been formally proposed or brought to us yet. And then regarding the play equipment, there is a plan. In fact, I believe I just read today from the city administrator that we're starting to remove old equipment from Sunnyside to put in replacements, Sunnyside Park, excuse me. And so there is a plan. I don't know if it's, if they're going to hit each park in a systematic way. Harrison actually has been updated over the years. I know it probably doesn't seem like it, but when I took my 1-year-old up there in 1994, that was interesting. So it has changed, but obviously that was a long time ago, but it has changed a little bit, but definitely take your point. And one of our council members lives right near McGee Park, and he talks often about, can we do a little something there? So I know that they're being looked at, and we can get you some more information about what the actual schedule is. But right now, Sunnyside Park is undergoing equipment removal for some new, safer, and more modern equipment to come in.
Yeah, and I think, Sean, aren't water rates higher in the summer? Yes. And that's I feel like saying that to you right now, Stephen. That's kind of weak sauce, not enough. But there is that in place, and I agree with Ann that we need to have much more. Right, when we're watering the sidewalk, as everyone's been saying, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it's with potable water. It's an outrage. Yeah.
Boy, this is multifaceted. I'll first of all talk that way. If we look at our water use, if we go back to the 70s, we're actually using less water now than we did back then, even with all the growth that's happened. So if you ask, is the city involved in conservation, there's a lot of practices that we've been putting in place over the years in order to reduce. Is there more that we can do? Yes, there's a lot more that we can do. One is that stick piece that you talked about, and as a council, we've had discussions, and I would say we're at a consensus that yes, we feel that we need to increase the stick as it relates to what the cost is for those that are going to water more and use the water in order to help in the reduction in that way. The second piece is I don't see it's that far off before, as a council, we also say let's go and go to an even odd watering in order to restrict in that way, and that's discussions that have happened, but we haven't landed on. Now, as we look at going forward, I know that there's one company in town with Phoenix Conservancy where they've actually been working with a number of businesses in order to do xeriscapes. In fact, DAPCO is one that they've actually come in and worked with most of DAPCO's space in order to do xeriscapes for that water reduction. And that's something that they're now ready to roll out to private and to other businesses. DAPCO is kind of their test piece. And so now they're rolling that out as it relates for private residences to be able to do more conversion, to reduce the lawn watering and put in a product that actually looks really good and is the right for our region and environment. So that's very nice that way. So that's, read that water side piece. The thing that I would say, and staff can give me a nod, yes or no, if we have the tape that's around playground equipment, it's because those are actually programmed for being replaced. Is that an act, or Mike, can you clarify? Because I know, if we look at Sunnyside, the big slide is programmed to be replaced. The merry-go-round is programmed to be replaced because it no longer meets code for playground equipment.
Sure. From looking at the equipment at Sunnyside that's going to start being replaced later this month through the 2023 CIP, including some of the bond expenditures, council's going to spend approximately $1 million replacing playground equipment in the next year to 18 months, including Harrison, Rainey, Krugel, McGee, obviously Sunnyside. I wish I had my notes in front of me now. But yeah.
You're doing better than we were.
Yeah. Because I just set up the bars, or I had Lori set up the bars numbers the other day. But yeah, there's a significant expenditure on upgrading parks equipment that'll be happening. And we're planning for those kind of as a step-by-step piece. So yeah, a massive overhaul. And then just for half a second, the council did set the goal on water conservation as has been explained tonight, and staff has committed to coming back to council before the end of the first quarter with recommendations to take action.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Related to that, and I know from PBAC, so Blue Space and Aquifer Committee, which is really taking the lead on this thing. There's the Water Summit that's coming up later this month. And then their desire is at that Water Summit to really roll out and talk more about these next steps that they're recommending. And then from there, they're hoping to convene a joint meeting with a number of electeds within our region in order for us to, as a region, come together and say, yes, we want to move forward in this direction and support it. So there is water is a big issue, and it's something that is being worked on, but there's multifaceted is probably the best way to describe it. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sutton Mooney, and I'm at 235 Southwest Church Street. And it's the first time I've been to one of these, so I don't know if this is the right forum. But one of the things that I'm concerned about is housing and the cost of housing in Pullman, and I know that we're growing and expanding and new housing is being built. But the lab where I work in on campus, and I talk to graduate students, and they have a really hard time making rent and finding places that are affordable. And in the department where I work, when new graduate students come in, part of their introduction is you qualify for food stamps. Here's where the food pantry is. Here are these social services that you might need. And so I'm just wondering if there's anything that the city can do to address these housing problems, because I imagine, and I've been here for 15 years and seen the housing prices just go up, up, up. And I figure if I was to move here right now, I wouldn't be able to afford to buy a house. And so I'm just wondering if there's anything that the city, maybe in conjunction with the campus, can do, especially about these students that we're trying to recruit to come in to live in Pullman and to work at WSU so they can afford to live here.
I'll start with this one. One of the things that I do in my day job is I teach real estate up on campus, and so I'm very aware when you're talking about housing prices and the change that happened, and the lack of affordability and attainability of our housing. We do have one of our council members, Megan Guido, who's actually in the back of the room. She'll be hosting a later town hall, but she is the representative onto the housing committee that we've actually set up as a council, and it's looking at this missing middle as it relates to housing and what are things that we can do to improve, and I don't know if I want to either Megan or one of our staff to talk about it, if you'd want to address that more, since you're more in it than we are right now. Please.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I also agree with you that
Megan, the mic, just because it's recorded. Thank you.
So I agree that housing is an issue, and it is something that I brought to the table as, let's put a committee together to look at this in greater detail. To your point about the western side of the state and the West Coast, and are those issues here? They are here in terms of housing, along with a lot of other things, maybe in a little bit smaller fashion, but housing is obviously something that we're all concerned about. And so this Housing Solutions Committee, it has a realtor, it has folks that are from agencies that are dealing with housing in the area. We have our community development person, our city administrator, and Jeff Guyette from Community Action Center, because he and Community Action Center deal with housing issues a lot. So what we're looking at is exactly what Francis said, as far as this missing middle, that more and more people are having trouble finding housing that they can get into. Once upon a time, they were considered entry-level houses, and we don't really necessarily have that at a price point for folks to even be able to afford. So are we looking at it? Yes, we are looking at it. So kind of twofold, or two tracks is what we're looking at. More of the long-term approach, because this is a pretty systemic issue. It's not unique to Pullman. We realize that we have to have kind of a long-term approach, and so we're looking at the idea of a regional housing authority. We are part of the Spokane Housing Authority right now, not getting a lot of attention, as you would expect, because Spokane has a lot of their own issues. But we have a small grant from the Department of Commerce at the state level to look at a housing action plan. So we are contracted to put together a more current housing action, or housing assessment rather, because the last time we did that was quite some time ago. It was before COVID. So that's kind of the long-term approach. And then the more immediate ideas are to look at basically our codes and our ordinances, and what are some things that we can do, whether it's accessory dwelling units or things that can provide more availability at a level that people like grad students or like folks that are just getting into the housing market can look at.
And Megan, your town hall is 2 days from now, Thursday?
It's on
At
Thursday.
6 p.m.
Thank you, Megan. I think too, we're trying to encourage developers to build more affordable housing. So I know there's a community right across from the elementary school, the new elementary school, that's more like cottages. It's smaller homes on smaller plots of land, and so those are more approachable perhaps than other new development. So we're trying not to have a huge, homes continue to be developed, but maybe more of the starter home, with maybe a little bit of a smaller lot to make it more easier for people to perhaps purchase those.
Hello, my name is Monique Slifer, and I live at 235 Southwest Mackenzie Street, kitty corner from Sutton. And this is also my first time at a town hall or a city council get-together. I came to just make a couple comments about the downtown street tree issue, and I'm going to follow up. There was some conversation about data and surveys, and I'm one of the people who commented on the downtown storybook survey. And I went back and looked at the summary of that survey, and I believe, if I read it correctly, that there were only 65 individual respondents to that survey. And so I got to thinking that is not a very large percentage of our city population. And I actually today, this afternoon, went through and clicked through dozens and dozens of the actual comments because I wanted to refresh my memory of what people said. And there were a number of comments strongly opposing removing our beautiful downtown street trees, and dozens of likes or thumbs up on some of those comments. My understanding is that the city is pursuing the Welch-Comer design plan, which will involve taking out many, if not most, of those trees. So I'm really kind of concerned that maybe the citizens' voices in Pullman have not been listened to or heard sufficiently on that. I've talked to a number of friends, relatives, colleagues, people in town. I have not heard one person say they want the current trees gone. Yes, lots of people do want the other benefits, the wider sidewalks, et cetera. And I have some professional experience as an arborist, and I know there are people on council who are aware that there are ways to achieve both of those goals. We can get the wider sidewalks and some of the benefits we want and not get rid of all the trees that we have. And I had submitted some email comments prior to that August 9th, I think, city council meeting with some specific data showing the benefits to climate change, aesthetics, business, the benefits that trees provide to downtown from a business perspective. They lure people downtown. People stay longer when you have a good urban canopy, an urban forest that's attractive and mature. My second comment is sort of, I thought in the intervening time period between that city council meeting, which I watched on YouTube, and now, I've been trying to think about the bigger picture of why Pullman doesn't seem to have a very cohesive urban forestry scheme or plan of any kind. I've lived here 27 years. I remember the pear trees that got cut down because they were dropping pears all over downtown Pullman, and then the current ash trees were put in as a monoculture, which of course was kind of a mistake, but there they are. And I'm curious as to why Pullman does not have an active tree board or tree commission. We also don't have an actual urban forester. I did some research on that today in the city code. I talked to somebody at the city to find information on that. And the short version is, in 1997, an urban forestry chapter was added to the city code, apparently, which says that the municipal arborist is the park superintendent. I presume that's Kurt Damon. He's got a lot on his plate. I suspect he doesn't have a lot of time to address street tree issues. There is supposed to be a municipal forestry commission that is the Parks and Rec Commission. I took a look at who's on the Parks and Rec Commission. I don't know all of those people. I'm not aware that any of them have an urban forestry background, or perhaps even we have a certified arborist on that commission. I'd really like to see the city get a lot more proactive about taking care of our urban forest, our urban canopy. If for no other reason we want to be visionary and look to the future, that's a pretty significant impact on climate change issues right there. So those are my comments. Thank you. And thank you for having this town hall. I think it's a great idea. I understand it's the first time. Yeah, I think it's fantastic. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. And I want to say, too, regardless of whether there's a town hall or not, we are always available to meet with you. When I left that council meeting, my understanding from Welch Comer was that the idea was to preserve as many trees as possible. In some areas, that's not possible, like widening the sidewalks. But what I heard from them that night, and please jump in, but what I heard was the idea that it serves the downtown area well to have those older trees, to keep the shade, to keep some of the height in there. And what they were looking to do was to diversify. Like there was a plan in that Welch Comer. I'm not sure if you heard that in the meeting, but I actually left that meeting feeling pretty solid. And the other thing I'd like to do is assure you that we heard you loud and clear on the trees, like the citizens. Speaking up. So that was one of the major topics that we talked about that night because we had heard you. Either one of you?
Yeah, that's right. And it made me want to, now I want to go review that plan again. But it had to do with not clear cutting all the trees, but we do need to take some out because they're too close to buildings. Their roots are too big they're disrupting sidewalks, which is what's making the sidewalks so inaccessible for wheelchairs and things like that at times, but not taking them all out and also adding more in. And then there's a phased plan. Every year, something would be added, more trees, different varieties, so that, yes, it's going to look new for a while, but once it actually matures, it's going to be a very interesting urban forest right in our downtown because there'll be lots of different varietals and native type trees that can withstand drought and being in a municipal setting. So I'm going to look at that again. I was with Councilmember Dueben coming in. I thought the same as everyone is feeling, but then once they explained it to me, I was like, okay. So it may require some removal of trees, but I know that we're trying to be thoughtful about that and not have it all happen at once. And looking at a kind of a different plan, a literal different landscape for our trees moving forward.
I thank you. I appreciate your comments about the urban forester, and that's something that I want to look further on because we need to have there needs to be a plan as we move forward. And I think about and just the story that pops in my head is that like squirrels here in town, squirrels are not native to Pullman. They were brought to Pullman by one of our parks director who he thought it'd be great to bring in 2 male squirrels. And here's what we have. But prior to that, we did not have squirrels. And I've actually heard this story directly from his mouth, so I related to it. And I was thinking that in the context of we need someone knowledgeable to think about this, especially when you're talking about some of the climate concerns that we're hearing, that if we can look at the forestry, that's very important. I know at the same time, we also need to look at the type of trees because one of the things that has happened over time is the type of trees that have been put in are actually ones that create more pollen, and you actually have more issues related to allergies as a result of some of the trees that have gone in over time in some communities. And so there needs to be that plan that is a balance in the whole process. So thank you.
Well, like the previous speaker, I'm very happy to have this opportunity to meet my council people and see who represents me. My name is Benita Lawhead, and I live at 1320 Northwest Hall Drive. And you mentioned organizations that work in Pullman, and one of those organizations is the Chamber of Commerce. And they put on Music on Main during the summer months. Every Thursday, they'd have a different group in the plaza next to Thomas Hammer. And I went to those. They were great. People brought their kids. They patronized the restaurants around there and Thomas Hammer and so on. And what I'm going to bring up is probably really minor compared to what other people have said, but I just want some information about it. There's a parking lot to the east of the plaza, and I often park there. And the building that is there that's such an eyesore, not only is it an eyesore, it doesn't smell good. And I just wondered what the city's role is in that. Does it just stay there like that forever, or is there some process that can help it be removed? I know communities have a hard time with that issue, but I just would like to know what your thoughts are about that. Thank you.
So at a recent council meeting, and this has been a council goal for quite some time, we asked for, well, before the council meeting, as part of our goals, we did ask, we've been talking about instituting a blight ordinance or something like that. And so at our, one of our most recent council meetings, the city administrator, who's going to, I think.
He's going to close
oh,
this.
okay,
He's
okay.
closing this out.
Anyway, because I was going to say, if you want to, go ahead. But anyway, they came to us and said, okay, staff is going to do this, so tell us what you're looking for. What are the things, what do you want to accomplish? What do you want that to look like? So we had a discussion, all of us, about, should it be in just the central downtown business district, which is pretty much what we think of when we think of downtown. Can it go more outward to include areas such as Bishop Boulevard, for example, Stadium Way? Or could it also apply to residential buildings? I think that we came up with definitely not just the central business district, but pretty much the whole ring around with the Stadium Way, Grand, and Main. And yes, we told them we would like to see accountability for building owners, because many times it's not the business that owns the building, it's a different entity. So building owners to be accountable, to perhaps register their buildings so that we can keep track of them every year, to have them answer surveys every year about what they're doing with their buildings, and if they're not doing something, why not? And then eventually, yes, setting up a fine system that if you don't do anything to your building in these areas, then we'll start to assess fines, and it will be retroactive. So no buildings would be grandfathered in. It starts from day one, all the buildings in the designated area. So we sort of gave them all of that, and now they're working their magic in the background, checking with our legal team to make sure that it's all legal and compliant. We use 2 cities' blight ordinances or vacancy ordinances as sort of springboards and got some ideas from, and that would be Everett and Auburn. They both have these in place, and we liked pieces of both of them. So we are we have heard over and over and over again, through every time one of us is new on council. That's pretty much the first thing is like, can you fix my sidewalk and what is going on with that building downtown? I mean, in that order. So we definitely have all dealt with this from being more new to more seasoned, and I'm really happy that it's finally we're going to get some teeth for this particular issue.
Yes, thank you for bringing it up because it is very top of mind for people. And as a council goal, we said this is a year that we want to find solutions for this, and that's what we're working on right now. And sometimes things turn slowly, but we're excited that all of us are in agreement that this needs to be done. And I know Mike's getting ready to close this out, so I just want to say thank you for everyone for coming. It was great. I appreciated it. And
can I just ask one question? Did the gentleman in the mask want to speak, or are you just standing the whole time?
I was going to say something really fast, but
Could we let
please.
It'll take just 1
He's
second.
been standing there the whole time. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Dave Jones. I live at 225 Southwest Mackenzie Street. I'm actually neighbors with Sutton and Monique, and here representing the College Hill Association as well. I'm not going to talk about that since I'm sure Allison Monchertolo did much better than I would. I would actually, as a member of the College Hill Association's Tree Canopy Committee, like to echo Monique, my neighbor's comments on the tree canopy, and I hope that that can be taken seriously and studied and given the attention it deserves because of the constellation of issues that affects. It's, the climate change stuff, the water stuff, the walkability, and beautification of our city. Business is impacted by that particular issue. I know my wife likes to go on runs around the neighborhood, and she loves where there's trees, and she doesn't love where there's not trees. And my walk up to the university to work every morning is much more pleasant where there are big trees and less pleasant where there are none. So thank you for your attention and for giving me a couple minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I wanted to echo.
Everybody wants to say their thanks.
Yeah, that's right. I do want for everyone who's come out, if you're anything like me, not being in your pajamas at 7 p.m. is a major sacrifice, and I appreciate that you're here. I also want to thank the city workers who showed up tonight, who are putting in extra hours for this and making everything here work so that we get to sit up here and get all the attention.
Hey, how about a quick round of applause? Thank you.
And I'd just like to add one thing. I think that Lamont Street wins tonight because you had so many people from Lamont. I used to live on Lamont, so. Okay, thank you.
So tonight was the first of 3 of these. Tomorrow night at 6 o'clock, we'll be back in this room. Nathan Weller from Ward 2 will be here. Council member Eileen McCall will also be there. Eileen, if you could acknowledge. And then we're coming back again on Thursday with council members Megan Guido in the back and Pat Wright up here in the front. And then I'd just like to thank and acknowledge these folks. So if there's any topical things you may have for any of our staff, Fire Chief Mike Heston, Public Works Director Sean Combs, Public Services, he hates it when I call that, Community Development RJ Lott, and our Police Chief Jake Opkennorth, and I've been here a couple times, so if there's something very directed towards us, please feel free to reach out. And then the last thing, on the way out the door, there's these little cards, and it has all the ways to get a hold of these council members, and I will tell you, if you email them, if you get a hold of them, they respond very well. They respond very quickly because I get a couple follow-up questions as well, so they can respond to you very thoughtfully. They're very much engaged with the information that comes through with them. So don't be afraid to wait for the next one of these. Please just reach out to your council members. They're there for you. Thank you.